The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And our website, xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is no stranger to all of you around the world listening to the show tonight. Howard Bloom is his name. And amongst other fantastic books that this gentleman has read, I should say written, not only read but written, he's the author of The Mohammed Code, and this book is the Rosetta Stone of what is happening today in the world in the Middle East. www.howardbloom.net is his website, and The Mohammed Code is available at Amazon.com. Joining me now from the Big Apple is the one and only Howard Bloom. And Howard, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Rob. I arrive in the middle of a diplomatic pickle for the United States.
It seems that the United States leaders don't know if this is an action or a war against ISIS. Has that been determined yet?
There's something more profound than that. To win a war, you have to have allies.
Right.
And the president's policy requires that there are not only airstrikes coming from planes, but that there are boots on the ground to hold territory. So far, the only people who are willing to put boots on the ground are the Kurds and the Iraqi army, although the Iraqi army did not account for itself well in its first battles. You know that it stripped itself of equipment and it ran.
Yeah.
Seems to be doing a little bit better with American air support. The difficulty is that ISIS, the Islamic State, the new caliphate, it is right on a border with Turkey. It threatens Turkey. Turkey is terrified of it. It threatens Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king has made statements against it. Ultimately, it will threaten Jordan. In fact, it could do that very quickly, Lebanon, and Egypt. So all of the Arab nations and Turkey, which is not an Arab nation but is a Muslim nation, are under threat from ISIS, and yet we cannot get any of them to commit to boots on the ground. Even Turkey, which shares that long border with the Islamic State. And there's a reason. The reason is that there is an undeclared war that you and I have spoken about many times going on in Syria. The Syrian civil war is not a civil war. It is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia on one side and Iran on the other side. It is a proxy war between the Shiites, that's represented by Iran, and the Sunnis, that's represented by the Saudis. And the ISIS was able to establish itself because Saudi Arabia was pouring large amounts of money into Syria to support the people that we call the rebels. They're not really just rebels. They're a proxy army for Saudi Arabia. And when those rebels went to war with each other over who would be in charge. And the moderates are nice guys, and the jihadists are not. They literally glory in blood. They literally dance over pools of blood with joy on their faces. That comes from a Yazidi refugee just today. When there's a conflict like this, the nice guys don't win. It's the guys who are willing to be the most brutal who win. So ISIS has won, but it's won as the dominant force in a group of forces that is fighting on behalf of Saudi Arabia. The result is that every time ISIS wins over a town, the Sunni members of the Muslim community, the folks in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia, they secretly rejoice because it's a win for the Sunni team. So we are trying to mobilize the very people who have encouraged the growth and funded the growth of the Islamic State. And so all they're willing to commit to, countries like Saudi Arabia, are maybe helping us somehow with air power, but not committing boots on the ground. This could lead to a major rearrangement of the map of the Middle East. Why? The Kurds have been fighting the Turks for a long, long time. We have to arm the Kurds. We have to train the Kurds. We're the only ones with the courage to go up against ISIS right now. And we've demonstrated that we can win victories if we are supporting their armies with our airstrikes. Well, that means a redrawing of the boundary someday in Turkey and giving the Kurds their own state, which would include a chunk of Turkey. So there could be a major rewrite of the Middle Eastern map that comes out of all of this. It's tumultuous times.
And we're going to talk more about this on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Exonation, Howard Bloom is our very special guest. www.howardbloom.net. He's the author of The Mohammed Code. And as I said, this book that's available on Amazon.com is the Rosetta Stone of what is happening today in the Middle East. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, and my very special guest this hour, the one and only Howard Bloom. In 2 minutes, ISIS, the Middle East, war, terrorism, and much more. Don't go away. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. Exonation, Howard Bloom is my guest. He's the author of The Mohammed Code, and it's available on Amazon.com. And as I have been saying all night, it is truly the Rosetta Stone of what is happening in the Middle East today. You can find out more about Howard and his other great books that he's written over the years at www.howardbloom.net. Howard, you were telling me earlier tonight that ISIS is making $3 million a day?
Yes. ISIS has taken a total of 11 oil fields. It's selling its oil on the Turkish black market. That is its major source of revenue, but it also makes money from selling women and children as sex slaves. They're serious about that. That's what they're doing. There is a wealthy Yazidi who stayed in Yazidi territory who is buying women and children at a high price from the Islamic State in order to save them. Other people are probably buying them for more insidious reasons. But the real thing that's going on in the Middle East is, since our natural allies are the Shiites, but we're having trouble working with them because they really, in their hearts, back the Islamic State and all of its victories, we have to turn to unnatural allies, and we have to create an alliance of enemies. The folks in that alliance have to include Bashir Assad, the brutal dictator of Syria, not to mention Iran, not to mention Russia, who backs Bashir Assad, Iran, who backs Bashir Assad. I loathe Iran, but I just came from doing Syrian or Saudi television a few minutes ago. But at any rate, we have to include China, and here's the reasoning. We made a big mistake when we toppled 3 dictators. We toppled Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. We toppled Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And we helped topple Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, or at least we cheered on the toppling of Hosni Mubarak. What happened in Libya and in Iraq after their dictators were toppled? The places turned into living hells. If you went to the store, you don't go to the store. If you went to the marketplace to buy bread, something you have to do pretty much every day, you stood a good chance of not coming home again, because there was a good chance there would be a car bomb or a truck bomb or a suicide bomber. Roughly 70 people a day were being killed in these market bombings in Iraq. Things are even worse in Libya. There's a civil war raging between a whole bunch of armed militias, and when this kind of chaos happens, that is the environment that the jihadists love, because they're more brutal than anybody else around, and they can beat everybody else around into submission and make them peons. So we should have learned a lesson from this. Dictators are necessary in the Middle East, especially dictators who provide a high level of education, a high level of secularism, a high level of women's rights, and a high level of medical services. All of those things advance the humans within their territories. That's what Saddam Hussein was providing. That's what Hosni Mubarak was providing. That's what Muammar Gaddafi was providing. Nasty, awful men, but they were doing more good than harm. So there is a dictator who is capable of reigning in the Islamic State. His name is Bashir Assad. He is the brutal dictator of Syria. He's our greatest natural ally in the fight against ISIS. He's the only one, in fact, who's brutal enough to win over ISIS. We have too many niceties, too many scruples, too many morals. I do, you do, because we want to be decent human beings. But war is not a matter of decency. War, in fact, is a matter of competing indecencies. Why involve Russia in this? Russia has 8 republics under its belly, like an ammunition belt, and they're all Islamic states. And it has been having jihadist problems with these Islamic states for 20 years. One of the first things the jihadists did was come into Moscow, bomb an entire apartment building, collapse it, and kill 200 people. The next thing that they did was come into Moscow, take an entire theater full of theatergoers hostage, and eventually over 300 of those people died. They took a school in Beslan. They took 1,100 people. 300 people died. 146 of them were children. These are jihadist threats, the kind of threats that we call terrorist threats to the Russians. And the Russians have basically been pleading with us to recognize that they share the same problem we have. And we've been refusing. For example, the Russians tried to warn us about these 2 kids, very highly privileged Muslim kids in Boston who had gone back to Dagestan and started hanging around with the jihadists. And we didn't pay any attention. Those 2 kids were the Tsarnaev brothers. They pulled off the Boston Marathon bombing. If we had listened to the Russians and recognized that we shared a common plight, a lot of people would have kept their lives and legs in Boston. So it is natural for us to ally with Russia, no matter what problems we're having in the Ukraine. It is natural for us to ally with China. China's got a huge province called the Xinjiang province. It's one of the biggest provinces of any kind of any state in the world. and 12.5 million people